Hey movie fans, John here from Fast Films, and today we're going to take a look at the 2009 comedy horror movie, called Jennifer's Body. The movie starts with a girl sitting in her messy room lined with crumpled papers and discarded material. A guy comes to her door and asks her to come out. She gets changed and the scene shows us that the girl is in a women's prison. She makes her way in the mess, with only a single toast on her plate. Meanwhile, a report appears in front of us introducing her as Anita Needy Lesnicki. As she stands at the window, a medical officer arrives and remarks that one toast might not be sufficient enough to give her the energy for the whole day. As she talks, Needy kicks her with all her might and the medical officer flies through the air and crashes into the other inmates. The whole mess erupts into cheers of laughter as the medical officer gets up with a bloody mouth. Meanwhile, Needy is taken back to her closed cell where she starts to recall the whole scenario. It all starts in Devil's Kettle, a small town named after a waterfall. An intriguing waterfall that swirls into a hole and it doesn't come out. Scientists have experimented many times but they can't find a possible reason behind this unique phenomenon. In that small town, the scene shifts to a house where a girl named Jennifer lies on her bed watching a gym show. She has deep dark circles under her eyes and she's in a devastated state. Meanwhile, Needy stands in the window and stares at her. Afterwards, she starts to narrate the story where 2 months ago, Jennifer, Needy and Needy's boyfriend, Chip, were completely normal persons. The flashback shows us Jennifer being the hot cheerleader of the high school while Needy supports her from the stands. They pass their smiles and enjoy themselves. Later, while Needy is by the lockers, Jennifer arrives and requests that she go to the Low Shoulder Rock Band show at the Melody Lane Club, where she can hook up with hot, salty guys. Needy tries to refuse her offer as she has planned to spend time with Chip, but Jennifer doesn't listen to her and urges her to come as she's her best friend. After clearing her point, Jennifer leaves. That night, Needy prepares herself to go to the club and tries on various dresses while taking the opinion of her boyfriend. Chip tries to make her stay, but just in that time, Jennifer arrives and both of them make their way down the stairs to meet her. She flings the keys of her new Chrysler as she collects Needy and starts to leave. Chip remarks the Melody Lane is not even a club and it's only a bar, but nobody pays him attention and the girls get in the car and drive away. As they reach the club, one of the guys from the high school, named Craig, tries to make a move on Jennifer but she shoves him away and moves on. Upon reaching the stage, they watch as the band arrives and start to arrange their instruments. Jennifer walks up to the lead singer and introduces herself. He shakes her hand and introduces himself as Nikolai. Needy stands silently and watches in disbelief as her friend goes into a trance just by looking at Nikolai. Afterwards, she leaves to the bar to grab a drink for themselves. Meanwhile, Needy overhears Nikolai talking about going for a hit on Jennifer if she's a virgin. Needy gets furious and confronts them. In the meantime, Jennifer returns with the drinks but Needy raises the red alarms for Jennifer. As they're discussing, the band starts playing and everyone gathers around. Nikolai starts to sing and Jennifer goes into a trance as she looks on. While everyone is focused on the band, Needy detects a fire spreading from the backstage. The fire rapidly travels across the wooden pillar up to the trusses. It starts to spread at an exponential rate and in a few moments, the whole club is on fire. Several people get burned and run over. Among all the fright, Needy grabs Jennifer and finds an emergency exit and escapes the building from a close space. As they finally reach in the open, Needy watches in horror as people die before her eyes due to the fire. Due to the aftermath, Jennifer goes into shock and just as they're about to leave, Nikolai arrives and offers them to go to their van. Needy strictly refuses to go with them but Jennifer agrees, and Nikolai grabs her hand and puts her in the van. She sits there like a defenseless prey as Needy watches her best friend being taken away by some goons. With no other choice left, Needy returns home and calls Chip to explain the whole situation. As they're talking, Needy hears her doorbell ring. She makes her way down the stairs cautiously and opens the front door to find nobody there. She cuts the call with Chip. Meanwhile, a shadow retreats in her kitchen. Just as Needy is about to go upstairs, she hears something and follows to the kitchen. There, she comes face to face with Jennifer, whose mouth is blood-stained, and her clothes are also covered with blood. There's a certain wilderness in her eyes. Needy starts conversing with her and offers her food, which she eats hungrily. But in the next moment, she growls horrifically and vomits an ugly, thick slimy sludge on Needy. She tries to console Jennifer, but she molests Needy and goes out of the front door, leaving Needy completely shaken and distressed. The following day, the news about Melody Lane being burnt down is spread everywhere. Needy sits in severe shock as everyone looks at her. In the meantime, Jennifer arrives at the class, totally unfazed and indifferent to any incident. Needy tries to make her realize what happened, but Jennifer roasts her in every reply. As they argue, their class teacher enters the class and explains the tragedy that befell them. The fire not only took major lives of citizens but also of some of the students from their school. Jennifer is still unaffected by the tragedy. After the class, Needy walks with Chip and explains everything that happened at her place with Jennifer. Chip denies her point of view and remarks it as her own visions. As they're leaving, an emo boy named Colin Gray meets them and compliments Needy. Chip looks at her interrogatively and inquires about their engagement. Needy reassures her boyfriend that it's nothing and they leave. Meanwhile, in the playground, a guy stands alone in a depressed state. Jennifer comes to meet him, who's actually Craig's best friend, Jonas. He cries in front of Jennifer as she lies about Craig's last words and lures the big guy away from the field into the forests. Upon reaching the woods, Jennifer starts to seduce him, and as they go on, animals start to circle them. Jonas gets uncomfortable, but Jennifer grabs his attention by undressing herself and seducing him even more. As he plunges into pleasure, Jennifer pushes him and attacks him with an abnormally wide-open mouth and monstrous teeth. In the meantime, their teacher hears Jonas's screams ringing through the woods. At first, he's about to leave, but he returns and makes his way into the woods. Upon reaching the spot, he stops dead in his tracks, as he sees Jonas's corpse completely mutilated with his guts falling out. Later, the police arrive at the scene with Jonas's parents. They both start crying and his father threatens to kill the bastard who did this to their son. In the meantime, Jennifer pleasures herself with a swim in the open lake and comes out of the water, beaming with elegance and glowing with beauty. Afterwards, she puts on her clothes and leaves. That night, Needy gets a call from Jennifer where she explains that she's feeling scrumptious, fully charged and very energetic. As they both talk, Needy gets an intermittent call from Chip, who says that he needs to see her immediately. She cuts off the phone and later meets Chip at the park, where he sits on the bench in utter state of shock. He tells her about the death of Jonas and Needy tries to relate it with all the incidents of the past days, but Chip still refuses to believe it. The days pass on. No other incident occurs and everybody starts to go back to normal. But seemingly, Jennifer's state starts to show a decline. She's no longer fresh, energetic and clever and has dark circles around her eyes. One day, as Needy and Jennifer leave the class, Colin comes up and asks Jennifer out. She rejects him and he walks away. As they walk along the hall, Needy mentions how Colin is actually really nice. Upon that remark, Jennifer calls him and invites him to her place for the night. The innocent guy happily agrees. In the meantime, Chip comes along and invites Needy over to his place. That night, the couple sits at the bed and they start their romance. Side by side, the scene shows Colin navigating through the streets, locating Jennifer's home by the address she gave him. As he drives, he leaves the lively neighborhood behind and enters a dark and creepy area with zero streetlights and dark houses along the lanes. He stops at a house which has only the attic light turned on. He enters the house hesitantly and finds it empty. Colin makes his way up to the attic where he sees many candles placed on the floor. He looks around in petrification as the whole place is extremely eerie. Just then, Jennifer appears behind him and starts to seduce him. On the other hand, Needy and Chip proceed with their intense lovemaking. Side by side, Jennifer shows her true form in front of Colin and throws him to the ground. Meanwhile, Needy catches a glimpse of Jonas and Jennifer sitting on the sofa in their bedroom. She gets terrified upon that sight and stares blankly into the air. Whereas in the abandoned house, Jennifer murders Colin and starts eating his internals. Meanwhile, Needy shoves Chip away from above her and leaves his bed. After that, she drives away in her car. As she's driving down the deserted road, Jennifer's monstrous state attacks her and she barely escapes. After the terrific endeavor, she returns home and sinks on the couch and starts to cry. After gathering herself, she goes upstairs to her bedroom. As an unexpected surprise, she finds Jennifer in her bed wearing her clothes. She slowly approaches Needy and indulges herself into an intense romantic venture. After it all ends, Jennifer explains everything that happened from the night of the fire. She explains that the band took her to perform a satanic ritual on her beside the waterfall. They mistook her for a virgin girl and tried to sacrifice her for Satan in order to gain wealth and fame. Fortunately, even after multiple stabs of the dagger, she didn't die and survived. Somehow, she has developed reforming abilities, and when she's full, nothing hurts her or can kill her. As she chatters on, Needy asks her to leave and she simply jumps out of the window and disappears. The following morning, everyone attends Colin's funeral and gradually everything starts to go back to normal. In the meantime, Needy starts researching about cults and the satanic rituals. She comes across the virgin sacrifice that explains if the sacrifice goes unsuccessful, the demon gets trapped inside the body, and that's what happened with Jennifer. As the school prepares for the annual dance, Needy warns Chip not to go. Chip asks her for a reason and she explains the whole scenario to him. She tries to elaborate on the points of the satanic ritual that was performed on Jennifer and how it changed her. After listening to everything, Chip simply refuses to believe any of it and urges Needy to come along nevertheless. Back at the school, the dance preparations are on peak. Needy gets ready with her pink dress. Meanwhile, Chip also suits up and both of them capture family pictures on their ends. On the other hand, Jennifer also applies makeup on her face in an attempt to hide her dullness and weariness. As Needy awaits her boyfriend at the school, Chip makes his way there on foot. While walking through a deserted park, Chip is approached by Jennifer clad in a beautiful white gown. Jennifer convinces Chip that the reason behind Needy's lack of attention towards him was an affair she was having with another classmate of theirs. She then manipulates the heartbroken Chip and starts making out with him in the park. Realization dawns on Needy after noticing that neither Chip nor Jennifer has shown up to the dance. She rushes to Chip's house to look for him and is told by his mother that he left for school a while ago. After their little tryst in the park, Jennifer takes Chip to an old, abandoned pool house. She again tries to get intimate with him, but Chip stops her, saying he loves Needy only. Infuriated by this, Jennifer attacks Chip and throws him into the pool. She then jumps in after him and starts feasting on him. In the meantime, Needy comes to the building looking for Chip. She watches in horror as the blood-spattered Jennifer, now in a demonic state, eats the flesh of her boyfriend. Needy jumps into the water and pushes Jennifer off of Chip, before spraying her face with an irritant. Enraged, Jennifer throws up a black substance all over the couple's face and starts floating in the air. A blame game then starts between Needy and Jennifer, where they both throw personal insults at each other. Feeling further defeated by the insults, Jennifer advances at Needy to eat her up. Chip, however, prevents the attack by impaling Jennifer through the stomach using a pool skimmer. Weakened by this deep wound, Jennifer escapes the pool house while Chip dies in Needy's arms due to his injuries and the loss of blood. Later that night, while Jennifer lay in her bed to sleep, Needy breaks into her room and attacks her. The girls start struggling against each other, during which Jennifer bites into Needy's neck. However, Needy manages to get the upper hand and stabs Jennifer in the heart, killing her and destroying the demon. Jennifer's mother enters the room after hearing the noise to see Needy straddling her daughter, with a bloody knife in her hand. We're then taken back to the prison cell where Needy is now kept. It is revealed to us that Jennifer's bite transferred her demonic powers to Needy. Needy starts levitating in the cell and breaks out of the prison. She then stops a car and asks for a ride to the hotel where the Low Shoulder Band members are staying. The Low Shoulder Band is then seen enjoying a good time at a luxurious hotel. Just then, someone enters their hotel room and brutally murders them all. The movie ends as the CCTV footage reveals the assailant to be none other than Needy. Drop a comment below and let me know how you found the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe and ring the notification bell. Thanks for watching, guys.